can't all be running downwind with sunny skies. We've got 500 miles that we need to do in the next 20 days, which is an average of 25 miles a day, which doesn't sound like much, but you need the weather to do it. So we got to make miles when we can. This is fine, but it's not the most comfortable to have the boat pounding a little bit, getting wet and leaning over 25 degrees. I'd much prefer having it behind me. The winds are about 15 knots out of the southeast. The current is with us, which means the waves are a lot steeper than they would be otherwise, but it also means we're going a lot faster over the ground. So we're taking advantage of this current and just putting up with the fact that it's rough. We're doing 7.3 knots over the ground towards our destination. How you doing, Lori?
Okay. It's not my favorite day of sailing. But they can't all be, I guess.
We spent our first night out of Red Bluff Bay in a place called Explorer Basin. It was dark and a little wet, but it afforded excellent protection from the south winds that were blowing in Chatham Strait. Oh, I slept so well last night. It was dead calm in the anchorage that we picked, and a little bit dark because the weather wasn't very good, which really helped in the morning because I didn't wake up until regular wake-up time, like 7 o'clock or something like that, which was awesome. It's the first time in a month that's happened. We are currently hard on the wind, sailing south down the last bit of Chatham Strait. I think we've been in Chatham Strait going south for like 5 days or 6 days. It's a very long strait. And we're hoping that westerlies fill in a day or two. This tipping the boat over and sailing into the waves is getting a little old. It's only been 2 days, but it'll be nice to have the wind behind us again. Right now it's blowing about 14 knots. It goes up to 16 and down to about 11. We have one reef in the main. The boat's doing 6.5 knots through the water. We're supposed to have current with us, but we don't, and we haven't figured the currents in this strait out. They make no sense whatsoever. Low tide is in like 3 hours, and the current should be with us that whole time. So there's something funky's going on. The original plan for today was to tuck into a bomb-proof anchorage just abeam of us. And if conditions deteriorate, we could still end up there, but I think it's unlikely. Sometimes you gotta take what you get. The sailing got harder as the day wore on, so we decided to seek shelter in a wild, isolated anchorage on the edge of the Gulf of Alaska called Egg Harbor on Coronation Island.
We're on shore in Egg Harbor on Coronation Island, which is a little island just on the edge of nowhere. And it's nice to stretch your legs, and the forest here is just beautifully carpeted in moss. We get to have a little walk on the beach and then go for a glass of wine on the other boat that's anchored in the bay.
One of the more challenging aspects of shooting video for this work is including the many social interactions we have with other cruisers. On this evening, we had the pleasure of sharing a bottle of wine and some food with Mike and Pam aboard Pamela Sue, their beautiful Fleming yacht. The day started with some promise. We had a nice sail down the west side of Coronation Island, but it died as soon as we turned the corner. These cliffs are a consolation prize though. They gotta be 300 or 400 feet straight out of the water. Bare red rock mostly, except for on the far end of the island where the cliffs are covered in green. Old Faithful's come out again. The wind has switched to the southwest and it's built enough that we can fly the spinnaker. It's about 10 knots true. And we're sailing pretty hot, so the boat's moving nicely, doing over 6 through the water. And unfortunately the current's against us, so we're only doing 5.5 over the ground. But I'll take the sail. We had to motor for about 3 hours this morning through light winds, and contrary winds, but at least the seas were nice and flat. From Coronation Island, we sailed eastward into the maze of islands protecting the west coast of Prince of Wales Island. The weather continued to be very unstable with occasional squalls passing through, so we sailed mostly under white sails to keep the spinnaker dry. We spent the night in a small protected bay called Garcia Cove and continued on to Craig the next morning. We're in Craig, Alaska, a small town of 1,200 people located on the west coast of Prince of Wales Island. It's an out-of-the-way corner of southeast Alaska. There's no pleasure boats here, well, a couple. It's all fishing boats and it's also a logging community. We liked Craig. We got our laundry done, went grocery shopping, wandered around town, and had a coffee from the hardware store of all places. The place definitely had a personality all of its own. From Craig, we continued south towards Dixon Entrance. To get there, we had to negotiate to Black Narrows, a tidal rapid that looked a little intimidating on the chart. We're just approaching to Black Narrows, and this is a pretty weird tidal rapid. First of all, there's no correction in our tide book for it. There's corrections for farther down the channel, but none for the Narrows itself, which is pretty bizarre because the tide book we use is pretty complete. The second weird thing is that Navionics says that the turn at the Narrows is exactly halfway through the tide, which is really bizarre. That means the current is completely out of phase with the actual tides. Well, Navionics is right, and we ran to Black Narrows with no issues. Our new friends on Pamela Sue were an hour behind us and also had no issues. We spent the next 3 days working our way south in very nice weather for motoring before turning east for Prince Rupert. The anchorages were excellent, well protected and scenic, but with our limited time were little more than waypoints along the journey. We enjoyed Mike and Pam's company for 2 of the evenings. They are also Mexico bound, so we hope to see them many more times between here and there. We rounded the south end of Prince of Wales Island this morning, and we're now waiting for a weather window mode. The weather window we're waiting for is some weather to get across Dixon Entrance, hopefully the sailing. There's this weird low pressure system that's happening on the, I guess, right at the northern tip of Vancouver Island. And once again, hopefully it will pass south of us. It sounds like it will, but it's going to bring unfavorable conditions for Wednesday. Today is Sunday, so it looks like we're hanging out in southeast Alaska for another 3 days and making a dash for it on Thursday. At least that's the plan right now. We're in a place called Judd Harbor on Duke Island in southeast Alaska. We're about 10 miles from the Canadian border in Dixon Entrance. And we picked this place because it's supposed to be kind of nasty tomorrow, but today was anything but. We had 10 knots from behind us. Well, up to 16, but 10 for most of the day behind us, all the way from Prince of Wales Island into this spot. It was a beautiful sail with pretty flat seas and not a lot of work. I spent most of the day just sitting and reading while Lori watched. And then we came into this anchorage, and it's warm and it's beautiful, and we're by ourselves, and you really couldn't ask for much more. The perfect day.
We just closed our Alaskan loop on our chart plotter. We were in Alaska a total of 33 nights. We visited 29 spots and covered 825 miles. Quite an adventure, and I'm so glad we pushed ourselves to do it.